Fresh tomato sauce is a delightful thing, but making it is truly dependent on the quality of the tomato that you start with. If the tomatoes that you are getting are from somewhere where they are not really sweet, then the fresh tomato sauce is not going to be all that good. But this is going to show you the technique so that you can go ahead and do it when you do have excellent tomatoes. I've got a skillet here and I have about a tablespoon of olive oil. Now, because there are so few ingredients and there's not a lot of cooking going on, you need to make sure that all of your ingredients are in prime condition. So make sure you use a really nicely flavored olive oil that can withstand heat. So the extra virgin olive oils don't hold up to heat as well as the regular olive oils. So just get one, get familiar with one, try a few brands, have an olive oil party and have everybody bring a jar and everybody taste them until you can decide which one you like the best so that you don't have to invest in a lot of different kinds. Now to this, I'm going to add about 2 cups of tomatoes. Now this recipe was taught to me by one of the chefs when we were in Italy, and this is something that the chefs do for themselves at lunchtime. So they use cherry tomatoes. I'm using grape tomatoes because they don't have quite as much liquid in them as cherries do. You could also cut up regular tomatoes. And as I said, this is one that's more of a kitchen recipe, so it's going to have seeds, it's going to have skin in it. Whereas recipes that they're going to send out to the patrons are probably not going to have those kinds of things. So it's a chef's recipe or more of a family recipe. I'm going to add just a little bit of salt to this as well. And you can adjust the seasonings later so you get it right, or you could leave it out. And that's all we're going to put in it at this time. And we're going to let this cook for about 10 to 15 minutes, depending on the quality of your tomatoes. Now, if the season is way off and you want to do this kind of a sauce, you could do something like this with canned tomatoes that you would drain maybe a little bit of the sauce away, but I would probably use it all. The reason that the canned tomatoes can work fairly well is that they are harvested, the tomatoes are harvested at their peak of maturity and put into the can at that point. So you get something very similar to what you would get in the summer, just not quite as fresh tasting. Now the length of time this needs to simmer is going to be dependent on, again, on the tomatoes. We want to have the tomatoes collapse so that their liquid comes out, but we don't want to cook away all the broth. So keep an eye on it or all the juice. If it begins to get a little bit dry, you could add a little bit of red wine, a little bit of white wine, a little bit of water if you wanted to. You could even add a little bit of broth if you have either chicken broth or beef broth, just enough to keep it liquid enough. This is going to make enough to put over a couple of cups of pasta, so it'll make a nice lunch when we get it done. I'm going to let this one simmer about 10 minutes. Once it's simmered down, then you're ready to take it off the heat. And we're going to just tear into it some basil, about 1 tablespoon, 2 tablespoons, depending on how much you like basil. Stir this in, and then basically your work is done for this recipe as far as getting it ready itself. We're going to make sure that we cover it with a tight lid. Now, if you don't have a dish with a pan with a tight-fitting lid, then you could use aluminum foil and tighten that down. You just don't want it to actually be touching the tomatoes because they're so acidic that it'll chew through that fairly quickly. And this is what you end up with after this is set for about 30 minutes, tightly covered, either with the pan lid or saran wrap if you've got some heavy-duty saran wrap, and you're ready to put it over either pasta like I'm doing here, or you could put it over bread and just use it for dipping with bread, and it makes a super lunch. You could use a little bit of Parmesan cheese on the top of it if you chose to, or just let it go like this, maybe with a few more basil leaves over the top of it, and it'll give you at least 4 servings. Again, this is fresh tomato pasta. Can hardly wait for the really good tomato season to be here so that we can dig into some really, really good samples of this. For Oklahoma Gardening, this is Barbara Brown.